Share Some Tea. I'm your host, Katie, and I'm joined today by Katie.
Katie squared again.
It's so good to have you back.
Thank you.
I'm so excited. We've been plotting this episode since last episode, and then you left for forever.
2 months.
Yeah.
To go visit some family.
And immediately, I think this is really funny because you're like, oh, I'm gonna go see my family, it's gonna be so great. I'm gonna spend the holidays where there's like not as much snow. And then promptly Oregon got killed by ice and snow and wind and storm. Meanwhile, it was like 50 degrees here.
Right? We, quick story for all of you guys
For everybody who wanted to know what happened to Oregon.
So for those who didn't hear, Oregon got hit by a few, not just one, but like a few storms. They got snow, high winds in the northwest, and that is where my parents live and who I was staying with while I was visiting. And so we lost power for 4 days, and the internal temperature of our house dropped to 40 degrees.
I didn't know it got that cold.
Yeah, 40 degrees. So we bundled up. I had my cat sleep with me, like under 7 different blankets. So she kept me warm. I kept her warm. It was great.
She was cuddling with you for survival.
Yep, basically.
Oh my
like
gosh.
under all of these blankets, and like my grandma's power went out. So we went and got her, like in the snow and ice.
Oh
went
my
and got
gosh.
her, brought her back to the
Like
house.
rescue her.
And then our power went out.
Oh my gosh.
So we spent 2 days at our place in the cold, and then finally my grandma's power went on, so we packed up our
everybody
stuff.
went back to her
And we went to her place for 2 days.
Wow.
And then
Wow.
finally, after... So we were without power for 4 days, but the greater part of the Northwest was without power at one point or another. It spanned like a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yeah,
At
it
like
kept
different
going.
Yeah,
It
different
just kept
areas
going
just
on
kept
and on.
losing power.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was crazy.
Wow.
Don't want to repeat that. It was a little
No.
adventure. It was great, but I
Yeah.
don't want to repeat it.
But like never again.
Yeah.
I feel like those kinds of things are always like in hindsight you're like that was a crazy experience, but like in the middle you're like no. No.
Oh my god. And the thing is, I wasn't supposed to be there. I
Oh.
normally take just like 2-3 weeks, and
Yeah.
I'm like, nah, let's move it to like a month and a half,
Let's
almost
just
2
do
months.
Let's just do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're like, let's just do it. I have the time. Let's just do it.
Right? So we're
Yeah.
sitting there trying not to freeze. We're eating,
gosh.
because we didn't have power to cook. We were eating.
That's right.
We were eating our MREs.
Ugh.
Our food storage stuff.
My
which,
gosh.
Granted, if anyone here listening has ever had Mountain House is actually really good. I take it backpacking with me,
That's good to know.
but I eat it only for situations like backpacking and emergencies like this.
yeah, like that's what it's
because
for, I'm pretty
yeah,
sure.
like I would not eat it every day.
like for choice.
yeah, like I
No.
would rather have like my stove, my microwave, my oven.
Modern amenities,
Right.
comforts.
I just like
power being one of them.
never do I miss cooking until I don't have power.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you instantly are like, options. What are my options? Because even if it's like I'm looking over there, I have some, cup of noodle soup left over from when I had a cold. It's like, wouldn't even be able to make that. Can't heat up any water.
Nope.
Like, you gonna nibble on those dehydrated peas? Like, nope.
Gross.
It sounds terrible. Oh man. Yeah. It gets real.
Yep.
It gets real fast. Dang. Well, we're really glad that Katie survived.
I didn't turn into a literal icicle.
A literal human popsicle. And we had talked about last time, after we recorded the episode, we kept talking because that's just what we do.
Yeah.
Because we have tea and we're friends. It was great. And we were like, oh my gosh, let's talk about dreams. And so our topic this week is all about dreams and dreaming. And I do mean the type of dreaming where you're unconscious and your brain just puts on a show. That's the kind of...
That's an interesting way of putting it.
That's the
Put on a
kind
little
of
show.
dreams that we're going to be talking about. Would you like to roll the dice first?
Sure.
Oh, and I need to introduce our tea. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yeah.
We are having, I thought this was going to be perfect. We're having a tea by Teavana, and this is their Citrus Lavender Tea. So it's like a nice, warm, cozy, kind of bedtimey sort of tea.
Ooh, but it is very hot.
It's still very hot. Yep, it's still very hot. So watch out on that end. Definitely. But that's what we're enjoying. If
Right,
you would
I
like
just-
to
I just
roll the dice.
push it down the stairs.
Yes, I have my little dice tower.
19.
Oh my gosh. Just like right out the gate. 19.
Why can't I roll like that during D&D?
You can never roll like this.
No.
Okay. There are a lot of common things, positive and negative, that happen in people's dreams, like showing up to work or school in your underwear, losing your teeth, etc., etc. Have you ever had any dreams like this? Or have you not?
Ooh.
With the common weird haps that happen in dreams.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm one of those people that lucid dreams, like, all the time.
Uh-huh.
And, like, sometimes I'll have, like, just a moment where I'm like, I think I might be dreaming. All the way to the, yeah, I'm definitely dreaming.
Like, oh, we are dreaming.
Right?
We are for sure dreaming.
One of the weirdest, like, moments, and I've noticed, just, fun fact about my dreaming, is that if I know that I'm dreaming, it's fine. But if I try to tell anyone else, any of the dream people, that, hey, I think I might be dreaming, I will wake up almost instantly.
Oh my gosh.
And it's so weird. So, like, I mean, it makes me think of, what's the movie, Inception?
Oh, freaking Inception?
Where, like,
that
you do anything wrong and people attack you.
Forever about Inception.
Yeah.
I love Inception.
It's such a good movie, but that's, like, I was watching it and I was like, yeah, that kind of feels like sometimes, very rarely can I, like, really change my dreams, but I will be aware a lot of the time that I'm like, oh, this is a dream. Cool, let's just not talk to anybody so I don't wake up and just enjoy it for a bit.
This is what I'm gonna do.
Right?
Okay,
The
cool.
worst one that I ever had, though, because sometimes, like, I'll have a nightmare and I'm just like, no,
Yeah.
wake up.
Yeah.
And you just try to force yourself awake. But one I had was, I think I mentioned this last episode, but so I served a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was gone for 18 months.
Yeah.
And, like, when you're, like, just getting into, like, adulthood, when you're, like, in your young 20s, and you've never, like, really been away from home, that's hard. And you get homesick, of course. I hope you get homesick. I hope you missed your family.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Yeah. Usually it's not
you,
a good sign if you don't.
Right? I hope you miss, like, your loved ones, the friends,
Yeah.
family, whatever, when you go away.
Your people.
But so, I was probably, like, not even 2 months into my mission.
Oh, wow.
And I had this dream where I went home,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody was like, oh, you made it! You did the whole 18 months! Woo!
Yay!
And we were, like, celebrating and stuff.
Yeah.
It was great. And I remember, like, we went, and I was at my grandma's house,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody was like, oh, well, what were some stories from your mission? And I was like, it's so weird. I can't remember anything past Sister
gosh.
Miller, who was my first and only companion at the time.
Like, at that point.
Yeah. So, of course I
of
didn't
course
have any
your brain
other
was like, I
memories.
got nothing,
I got
man.
nothing, sorry.
There's nothing in the files.
Yeah.
Like, make up something, I don't know.
It's a SpongeBob episode where they're all just running around. That's basically what it was.
That's amazing.
And so I was like, yeah, and they're like, it's probably just like the stress of being home and the huge change. You'll remember as time goes by.
It'll come back, kid. Don't worry.
Right? I'm like, cool.
Like, thanks, subconscious.
So yeah, so then the dream skips because of course your brain doesn't like
in sequence.
Yeah.
It needs to be like movie. Like, skip that scene. Just
Yeah,
cut forward.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so now you're over at your neighbor's house who you grew up around for the first 20 some odd years of your life. And they say same thing. We were just hanging out and they were like, tell us some stories. And I'm like, I got nothing.
I have nothing, guys.
Past Sister Miller, I got nothing.
Oh, wow.
And they're just like, oh yeah, that's weird. So then my sister, who's a photographer,
Yeah.
she comes up to me and is like, hey, can you come across the street to the house, to Mom and Dad's house? I need to grab my camera. I want to take pictures. And I was like, oh, okay.
Heck yeah.
So I ran outside. And as I said, I'm from Oregon originally.
Yeah.
And so we run outside and I look around and there's bright blue sky and there's it's like nice and warm, the sun's out,
Perfect day.
And my sister gets about halfway across the street and I stop dead at the very edge of the curb. And I look around and I look at my sister and she stops and she looks at me and goes, what are you doing? Come on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Nicole, I think I'm dreaming.
Oh.
And she's like, what are you talking about? You're not dreaming. And
Yeah,
she's like happy and like
dream
smiling.
People. Yeah.
And it was the weirdest thing because she's all happy and
trippy.
smiley. And I'm like, I think I'm dreaming. And she's like, you're not dreaming? And I'm like, Nicole, I'm not supposed to be back until winter. It is springtime here. It should be snowing right now.
Oh, snap.
And I just watched my sister's expression fall, and she looked really upset, and she just went, I'm so sorry, and I woke up and immediately burst into tears.
Oh my gosh. I mean, like, of course you would.
Right?
Of
I
course
was
you would.
so homesick that I just
That's
had this
wild.
crazy dream.
Oh my gosh, your poor brain was just like, here, do something nice for her
Right.
for a change.
Right?
Oh my gosh, that's intense.
Mm.
That's an intense dream.
But then there are like nightmares and stuff that I've had that I had when I was like 5 or 6
Like a kid.
that I still remember.
Yeah.
And like just random things, like my grandma had she used to have these bookends that were owls. And for whatever reason they terrified me as a kid. And so I would just like to like almost, I would say, until I was like 8 or 9. Like I was still just like kind of like tiptoeing around them, being like, I don't like you guys, you're weird, I don't like how you look.
That weird uncanny valley
right?
vibe from the owl bookends.
We're just like, I don't like the owl bookends, they're kind of weird. But like now I look at them, she still has them, I look at them and I'm like, they're not really that weird, but okay.
You know, we as kids, we're freaked out by like the weirdest things. Like I definitely have memories of dreams that I had as a kid that were like so freaky and so terrifying.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, why was I so scared of that? Like, our brains are so weird sometimes.
Yeah, I had a nightmare that those bookends chased me. Like,
Great.
and I still remember that nightmare
That's
because
so funny.
it scared me so bad as a kid.
Well, I love that we've already started out so well. I knew this was going to be a perfect topic. I'm going to roll the dice and see where we head next. Wow, we're just going right down the line. Again, why can't I roll like this?
Seriously.
Yeah, watch. I'm going to roll a wisdom saving throw.
8.
Yeah, okay, so see, that's how it works, guys. Anyway, 17. As we know, the internet is a fount of information, which we can all definitely trust all of the time. Have you ever tried any suggestions from the internet to dream better, or you remember your dreams? Did any of it work, etc., etc.?
Ooh.
Yes, I have done this.
I have not.
Okay.
Tell me.
Okay. I did this a little bit in college, and then I also did this while I was serving in Texas with one of my companions. Shout out to Sis Moo. You know who you are. So both in college and then when I was in Texas, we talked about, you talk about everything, like with your roommates, with your friends and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
At least I did. If people can't tell, I'm very talkative.
Social.
Yeah. So, ended up talking about like dreams, lucid dreaming, keeping dream journals, like what to do to remember your dreams. And Sis Moo, my companion on my mission, had actually done a like little study while she was in her undergrad about different techniques to try to dream better. And it never like panned out and she wasn't able to use the data, which bums me out enormously. I would love to participate on something like this. But essentially what they did, and what we ended up doing, because there's advice like, oh, if you drink like 8 ounces of water before you go to bed, you're gonna have to pee in the middle of the night, and because you'll be slightly awake, you'll remember your dreams better. You know, it was kind of like the logic behind it. There was also the logic of like something about like eating chocolate because of the like endorphins and the little bit of caffeine or whatever that keeps you slightly awake or whatever, so you remember your dreams better. I don't think any of this is like founded in any kind of actual science.
Okay, well, if we're talking about food before bed, I have done the whole like pizza right before bed.
Yeah.
And I could not tell you what they were about, but I do remember having the weirdest dreams. Just like waking up and like the whole like WTF of this.
Yeah, like what was that? Yeah, so like the idea was, okay, if you want to remember your dreams, you drink water. If you want to have like vivid dreams, you eat chocolate. And so we're like, okay, what if we combine the two and drink hot chocolate before we go to bed? Just like a quick 8 ounces of like dark hot chocolate, just pound it for science, guys. For science. And so then, I don't even remember how long we attempted this, but I do remember at least the first couple of days we both woke up like completely remembering our dreams. And they were weird. And they were all weird. And, like, we didn't stick it out very long. But it was so fun. And I've always wanted to try doing something like that again. And have, like, actually have, like, good good study size group, you know? So guys, if you're listening, whoever you are, I don't know, if you want an idea for like a weird, useless information kind of study, I will 100% participate in eating chocolate or drinking hot chocolate before going to bed and then writing down my dreams so we could find out, does this actually work?
I have heard that if you don't want to dream about something, like if you have like consistent nightmares or like, or if you like just watch a scary movie and you're like, I do not want to dream about that, as you're falling asleep, if you can, I fall asleep very slowly. And so I have plenty of time to think about
kind
stuff.
of think about your day and things,
But as you're falling asleep, even if it's scary, like consistently think about the thing. Like you can think about other things as well.
That's interesting.
But consistently think about it, because supposedly, and everyone listening, please take this with a grain of salt, because it's something you read on the internet
and heard on a podcast.
And heard on a
this
podcast.
Is not in any way any kind of medical advice.
Right? But I have heard that if you think about that thing consistently, then like enough, then it like brings it to like the forefront of your mind. And since your dreams are more like a subconscious thing, then it like won't be able to drift back into your subconscious or something like that.
Makes sense, but I've also heard the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah, where
if you
it's
think
like,
about it,
if you want to, let's say you really want to have a dream where you're playing with puppies in the park or whatever, then you need to think about parks, puppies as you're like falling asleep.
Interesting.
And like get it into your like foggy, sleepy brain as you're like falling asleep.
That's fair. I could see like if you were like on the verge of sleeping and you're like puppies, then your brain's like, okay, we're thinking about puppies
and then
still.
That's where it sticks. And I don't know, dreaming and like how closely tied it is to our understanding of the subconscious mind is like so fascinating to me. But I feel like there's like so much about it that we just don't know, and there's not a good way to find out. Like, I don't know. There's interesting stuff coming out all the time. But yeah, like there's things like that where it's like, oh, if you don't want to think about the horror chainsaw movie that you just watched,
right?
You know, and not have a horror chainsaw, but then the exact opposite advice when you want, maybe it has to do if it's like positive or negative.
Maybe.
You know, if you perceive it that way or not. But yeah, like I've done stuff like that before when it's like, I purposely want to have a dream about X, Y, and Z. So I'll like think about this thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like, this isn't really even related to the question, but like I had to go through a lot of like really intense like science, math heavy classes in my undergrad.
Oof.
Yeah. And you just had to like use every spare moment that you had to study. And I had read some interesting papers about how listening to things as you fall asleep can influence your dreams. So like listening to different kinds of music was mostly what it was looking into. And does your subconscious brain like hear? Like, can you hear things? And does it influence your dreams or influence you when you wake up? Kind of thing. And it was all about music. But I made the logical leap of like, okay, if you can hear while you're unconscious, could you then study?
Just listen to like a podcast about all the things you need to know.
Dude, I kid you not. I would audio record my lectures so that I could study back through them later. And I didn't replace any of my other studying with this. I just added it on. Because I was like, well, if this doesn't work, I don't want to screw myself over.
Yeah.
But it's like, if I could harness the power of the subconscious brain somehow to do better in like general chemistry, great.
Yeah.
Anything, literally anything to help myself out, right? So I would record lectures and then put them in the order of like importance and listen to them on like the lowest volume setting possible so I could barely hear it as I was falling asleep.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, the lectures that I heard in my sleep, I always tested better on.
Interesting.
Always. However, side effect, I trained myself to fall asleep to the sound of my professor's voice.
Oh, no.
So, you know, like, take that and run with it if you want to. And, like, again, I still studied the material the same way when I was awake, right? I had my flashcards, you had your study groups, your review, you did your homework, your assignments, all the things. I was still doing all of that for all the material, but the ones that I actually listened to when I was asleep, I always tested on better.
Interesting.
It's not really solid evidence, but it worked for me. It definitely worked for me.
Very, very much like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish, because I love reading, but I don't feel like I have the time for it.
No, you just don't.
And so I wish that, like, you know, you could remember what you were listening to. If you listen to an audiobook, then it's like, oh yes, I listened to this while I sleep because, you know.
Because you could just enjoy it as much. That would be really great, actually, because then it would just turn into like a movie.
Right.
In your dream. We should figure that one out.
Oh, I don't know if there are some books that I would like to live through
immersed in.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you definitely want to like pick and choose wisely. Right? But if you were like the main character or the superhero or whatever, it would probably not be that bad.
That's fair.
You know? That's like a next level kind of VR experience. One day.
It's like Sword Art Online.
Yes.
That's what we're going for.
There we go. There we go. Well, would you like to roll a dice?
Yeah.
It's like hiding behind the little tower. Yeah,
there we go. Alright, we got Nat 20.
Wow. Like, I kid you not. I cannot roll dice like this when we're not playing D&D.
You know what this means? Is that Saren, for those of you at home, my character in our D&D campaign, Saren's gonna die next week.
Yeah, well, you already did almost die, just barely, so, like,
you know what? I feel like being an undead, you kind of, like, don't really count deaths anymore, really, so.
That's true. At that point, it's like, what are we really doing? It's like, it would be like an immortal counting their birthdays.
Yeah,
it's redundant after a while. Anyway, question 20. Tell me about a dream for your life that you had achieved or are currently achieving. So this is like real life dreams.
Real life, like, accomplishments.
Accomplishments. Something that you wanted that you have achieved or something that you're working towards. Anything. Little, big, whatever.
Currently working, I'm in different stages of this current dream, but I like to read, but I also love to write.
Oh.
And I finished writing my book. I took a huge hiatus because life comes up.
Oh gosh, dude, yeah.
But I finished it a number of years ago. The first draft, edited it, got a second draft, and now I'm working on the third draft.
That's dedication.
Hopefully getting the third draft done soon-ish.
Oh my gosh.
So I can look at publishing. And that's been, I've been writing like short stories and like novels since I was like freshman, sophomore year of high school.
God dang.
Which
I should have had you on here.
I'm not telling you all how long ago that was, but it's been a while.
I should have had you on here for my like November episodes because we did a NaNoWriMo special. Talking all about writing.
Oh, that would have been great.
Oh, that's so exciting though.
I love writing so much.
Wow. That's so cool. I feel like the hardest thing about writing is going back to a piece and doing all that editing work. Mm-hmm. And like, you're close though.
Sometimes it's hard, like just going back and editing and being like, I think this sounds good, I don't know. But there are times. So I actually finished the very, very first draft of this book. I finished it right before I left on my mission. Which again was a number of years ago.
That's a chunk of time.
Yeah, it's a chunk of time. Yeah. Like I said, huge hiatus from writing. But I'm gonna let all of you at home guess how old I am.
It's okay, I don't tell them my age either.
Yeah, there you go.
But
so I finished it right before my mission, and then all throughout my mission, I was like, I'm enjoying my mission, but then you get those little thoughts of like, oh, when I go home, I'm gonna do this, whatever.
I'm gonna do that. Yeah,
so
you kind of like plan a little bit,
right?
Everybody does that, I think.
Right. So I was thinking about my book and stuff, and I was like, oh, it was so great. I'm so glad I finished it. I came home, reread it, and was like, this is hot garbage.
Oh no!
Like the bones, like the
skeleton.
Like, the skeleton and like the initial structure of it all. I'm like, okay, we have something. We have something good here. But oh goodness, could you see the high school writing in it? And I was like, oh, we are changing all of this.
Oh my gosh.
And so like the gist of the story is still there. And I did have one of my editors who is a very, very good friend of mine. She did threaten me to not kill off certain characters or to not like change certain things.
Yeah.
Because she's like, this is the best part of the book, or like this
like,
character
don't change
is the
this
best
because this works really well. Don't change that because I like this.
Yeah,
like,
and so I'm like, okay, I'm still gonna stick
friend.
with these things, but how about I change these things? And she's like, oh yeah, those things change those things.
It's like, okay, sure,
no, you're good. Just keep this part.
But don't take my favorite child.
Yeah, don't take my favorite character.
That's
don't
amazing.
take my favorite scene. And so, like, I've been revamping the whole thing.
Dang, good for you. That is not an easy thing to tackle.
Yeah, especially because, like, when you look at the old draft, and I'm like, oh, it's so high school. It's so bad.
Oh, it can be so uncomfortable.
Right? But then you also, like, you worry that the current draft, you're like, this is the best thing
like,
ever.
This is good now, but what if it's actually not?
But what if my brain is just like, yeah, this is definitely not hot garbage, and it totally is. I just can't see that yet.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, and, you know, that's why we have editors. That's why we have beta readers. That's why we have other humans that look at it so they can give you decent feedback to help you see the light. But like it's so hard looking back on anything I feel like that you started, your younger self started, and then you kind of had to leave and come back to. But like, what a testament though to like our younger selves and where we were at, and being able to like show your growth. So I feel like with something like writing, like an art of that nature, it's slow, it's monotonous, and your voice and your skill build slowly over time. And I think a lot of young writers feel like, y'all are all like, I gotta make it in this life, I gotta be amazing right now. It's like, you can all get there. All you have to do is just keep writing and go back and editing stuff once you've gotten experience under your belt, so that you can get it there. It's not like that piece that you wrote when you were a little high schooler had to stay that way, you know? And it takes a lot of self-confidence to go back to that old stuff and be comfortable with seeing it how it is now. Yeah. But then remembering the vision, remembering the skeleton and thing at the core, and being able to bring it into the vision that you have now for it. Like, that is a really hard thing to do. So, I don't know. This is kind of going back to, like, all of my episodes in November, but, like, if you guys are interested in writing and you enjoy writing or any creative thing, just stick it out. Just definitely. Stick it out. Like what Hannah said in one of our previous episodes, you don't know what you're doing until you're doing it. Like, that hit me so hard when she said that, and, like, this is a dream that your little younger self wanted so bad, and look how close you are now. Because you've stuck it out. That's so exciting. Yeah, and I, like, look back, because I'm like, oh, yeah, I've been working on this book for a couple of years, and then, like, in the back of my brain, I'm like, you've been working on this current draft for a couple of years. But the project? No. But, like, I actually, I somewhat recently moved, and so when I was going through all of my stuff, being like, do I move this with me, do I get rid of it, you know, whatever, the whole thing with moving, I went through a giant box, and in the very bottom of the box was a white binder, and I opened it up, and there is my first draft printed with all of my editor's original notes from the first draft. And I was like, I just stared at it for a bit and like started flipping through certain pages, and I was like, yeah, you're still hot garbage, but I'm glad you exist. But, like, yeah, like, good for you. Like, you went through that whole thing. You put your little heart and soul on paper. You let somebody else edit, and then, bless your soul, you kept it. Like, seriously, keep those things. Because maybe you look back and you hate it, but my gosh, you worked so hard for it. Yeah, and there are, like, certain things where I'm like, oh, yeah, like, I definitely need to keep this scene in. It just needs to be, like, a little bit different. A little different. And, like, I still want to keep, like, the vibes and, like, the like morals, or like the like flow, the overarching story, the skeleton, the thing that's there at the core. And then it's just like, but we're gonna change the characters because they do act very high school for who they are supposed to be, and that's okay because that's the person that was writing it. I think that's something that we forget too, because like when you're in a certain age group and you write a story of people that are also in that age group versus a different age group, like your experience, your perspective, your voice is heavily influenced by like where you are at and where you have been. So yeah, of course they acted like high schoolers. That's who you were. Well, and I do distinctly remember 16-year-old Katie, maybe 15-year-old, but teenage Katie
was told by her editor, who was a family friend who had like graduated and like gotten all of these like degrees in like English and like the
big fancy
adult person who had like published their own
shiny
book.
And fancy.
Yeah, and I do remember I was trying. She's like, "What genre are we going for?" And I'm like, "I would probably like this to be young adult," and I still do. That is something that has not changed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "We're doing a young adult novel," and she's like, "Cool. Might I suggest?" And she gave me a whole list of suggestions that I still have. I have like, email upon email from her. But I do remember her being like, "Might I suggest that you make this character and this character a little bit older?" And I was like, "Maybe. How old are we talking?" And she wanted me to make them go from a 22-year-old character to a 30-year-old character. And in my
bet your
teenage
brain was
brain,
broken.
I was like, "You're making them old.
You're making them old."
Yeah, I remember thinking
that is so
and now,
funny.
Fun fact for you all, I am over 30 years old, and I do not feel old.
That's so funny. Well, and like, this is such a tangent, but guys, I can't leave it alone. I just love writing so much.
That's
if you were, okay, like, think about it this way. Let's say you were a writer now and you're trying to write younger characters. Like, how much work you have to work on writing a believable 6-year-old child. That is so hard. And so then in the reverse of that, let's say you're in your 20s and you're trying to write a book about a senior citizen aged person. Like, it is a very difficult task to put yourself and create a character that is an age that you are detached from.
Yeah.
But if you can learn to do it well, like, it's beautiful. Yep. It makes that story so breathable and so much more real, because I hate to break it to all you young adult fiction writers. Everybody isn't like perpetually 25 years old. Right?
Right? Unless you've got some weird magic-y things going on.
Like, which is fine.
Vampires,
that
fae,
is totally
whatever.
Fine.
But
totally
like,
fine.
Yeah, not everybody.
Not everybody's 25 forever. Not everybody is 16 forever, and not everybody has like killer abs and is just like
at
so
16.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, nobody had killer anything at 16.
Yeah,
Let's
seriously.
be real.
There might have been like 1% of us, but I was not that 1%.
No. That's so exciting. Will you let me beta read for you?
Oh, absolutely. Do you want to like read it chapter by chapter as it comes out, or the whole thing?
Whatever you want me as a beta reader to do, I will do.
Cool. I will probably send you chapter by chapter, because then I will know where I'm going.
It also keeps you like on point. If that's like a schedule, I can help to be like, hey, have you finished the next one yet?
Yep.
Gotta turn in your assignment.
Yep. I have you and 2 other people who are like, I will read it chapter by chapter. It will give you the motivation. And I'm like, okay.
It does help. Yeah. And that's some more advice on, this is not supposed to be about writing, but here you go, guys.
Yep.
Have a support group. Like, have other people that write, have other friends that write. It doesn't have to
hold each other accountable.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be anything that's like fancy. It can be like through your school or just a group of friends or people that you meet online, whatever. But like, support each other and keep yourself accountable. It helps so much. And it can help to get rid of like that fear that we have, right? Because I think a lot of people who haven't like stretched themselves and shared their art, like whatever it is, it's because you haven't yet gotten that consistent feedback and realized like, no, it's not because you're terrible. It's like, no, these people are here to help you. You're here to help them, and we can all together build things.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing for me. Is I'll put a sentence or 2 on paper, and I'm like, that is awful, and I'll go to delete it, and it's like, no, just get something down.
Yes.
You can edit it later. You can literally like, I write young adult fantasy. Yep. And sometimes it's like historical a little bit. Sometimes it's like fun. Sometimes it's more like Lord of the Rings, where it's like a completely new world.
A whole new world.
Yeah, exactly. But like, there will be sometimes when I can't think of anything to write, especially if I'm writing like dialogue, and I'm like, how does this character say this? And it's in a fantasy setting, so we're going to speak like old-timey, you know, whatever.
These
or like
and thous and divides.
Like fantasy language and all that, fantasy terms.
Yep.
And I'm just like, I have actually written as I'll put it in like bold letters so I know to come back to it.
Yeah, you go back.
Like, I'll
I
mark
do that
it somehow.
stuff. I do that stuff. I'll highlight things and be like, this needs help.
But like my high fantasy elven character is like, so that's cool, bro. Something like that. Yeah. Like, and I'm just like, he says something to the akin or to
that
the
sounds refined
something
and
akin,
high society.
something akin to that sounds cool, bro, but in different terms.
It needs to be his, yep, in their dialect. That's so funny. Oh my gosh, I relate to that like so much. Wow. I think we have time for one more question about dreams. We'll see. But I will roll the dice one more time.
I mean, if people aren't used to...
That's more like it.
6?
It's a
nice.
6.
People aren't used to the tangents by now.
I know. If you're... Really, what people should be listening to this podcast for are tangents and tea. Which would have been another good name for it, but that's okay. Okay. Question number 6. Have you ever had reoccurring dreams? Or a reoccurring theme in your dreams? I have sort of. I feel like for me, it's more of the reoccurring theme than the actual dream itself. Shot by shot, a replay. You know, I too. I've gone through different periods where I'll have very vivid lucid dreams, and then just kind of what I would consider very like typical vanilla dreams that are just kind of weird, and you sort of remember and sort of don't, and then you come back to. But in general, it kind of depends on what I'm doing a lot of and what I'm thinking a lot about in my waking life. So, especially in my undergrad, I was writing a lot. That was like my escape. That was my like, you did a good job today, Katie. You can
go write some stuff.
You can go curl up in a dark room and type. Good job. So that's what I would reward myself with if I did a good job studying or whatever. And don't worry, guys. Like, I had friends and I was very social, but like, I just liked writing, and it was always just like for me. But because I was writing so much, my dreams very much just kind of became an extension of the things that I was writing about. And that has continued to like this day. Like not last night, but the night before that. Most of the time in my dreams, unless they're like stress dreams or whatever, they're about characters and stories and things that I have written, am writing, thinking about writing. That tends to be like an overarching theme constantly all the time. If I'm not my main characters, I'm usually like interacting with them or whatever. It's really fun.
At the height of my writing, I was doing a lot of that too, where I would dream about stuff, and I actually ran into so the book I'm working on is actually like a 4-part series, and so there are actually 2 villains. To not spoil anything, but
spoiler alert: there's 2 bad guys.
There's 2 bad guys
in this unnamed book.
Yep. So yeah, you guys don't even know my full name, so it's fine.
No, they don't. The only person they know their full name of is me, and we have 4 listeners, so you'll be fine.
So there we go. No spoilers.
No spoilers.
But yeah, so there are like 2 different villains throughout at different points in the stories. And I have run into both of them.
Oh, wow.
And one of them was definitely a nightmare because one is more of a like morally gray villain where like he is doing things for a certain purpose, and you're like, not the best choices.
He's not a great person, but he's not a terrible
get what you're
person.
Doing.
He's like a relatable person.
Yeah. And then the other one is just a psychopath.
Great.
And so like the one I have nightmares about when I'm like in like
very stressed
and stuff. But then the other one, like, I've literally had a dream where, like, we were running away from something. And I was like, you're the villain. Why are you, like, helping me do something? And then I was like, I woke up and
dream logic is the best logic.
I woke up and I was like, well, you're not the worst of the 2, so meh.
I was like, I guess this makes sense for you.
Right.
Oh, well.
But with the reoccurring thing, for whatever reason, my brain will do this thing where I start to lucid dream.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, I've had this dream before. And then I'll wake up, eventually. Yeah. I'll wake up, and I've never had that dream before.
Oh, that's weird.
But my brain is just like
in the dream, your brain was like, yep, this is just the same thing.
And I'm like, oh yeah, cool. I've totally had this dream before. And then
That's really weird.
Yes, it's so weird.
That's really bizarre.
It happens all the time. I think the
Wow.
only time I've ever really, it's like once or twice, had an actual reoccurring dream is if I'm dreaming, wake up for a split second, and then go right back to dreaming. I will just continue that same train of thought.
Definitely that's happened to me, for sure. And sometimes I've tried to will that to happen. You know, when you like wake up from your dream too soon?
Yes.
And you're like, gosh, dang it, I needed to finish the thing. And
Let's
you try
get into
to,
the good part.
you know, you hit snooze or whatever. Or maybe it's 3 a.m. and the stupid cat woke you up or whatever. And then you go back to your dream and you're trying to get back into the same story and you can't. Oh, that's awful.
Yep.
That is like the worst
worst
possible thing that could happen. Oh my gosh. I was just, like, as we were talking about, like, reoccurring dreams, I will have things that happen in dreams. And this is crazy. I have never talked about this to anyone ever.
Oh.
I will have things that happen in dreams that it will be very vivid and very clear, and usually I wake up and I remember the whole thing and I'm like, that was a weird dream.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was usually like a weird conversation or in like a weird place or something, and then usually it's about a year to 2 years later it will happen in real life.
What?
Yeah. It's the craziest. I sound like a crazy person when I admit this, okay guys? But like, I kid you not. I have had this happen multiple times. And usually what will end up happening is, like, the most recent one that happened, I was having a conversation with people at work. And we were talking about, and I remember in the dream, we were talking about something that was absolutely ridiculous. Like, myself and these people would never talk about this thing. We were, like, sitting around in the office talking about this topic and just like chatting and having just the weirdest conversation about this really off the wall topic. And I woke up and I was like, that is ridiculous. That's crazy. I would never. And then it happened. And that's like, I know because I journal. I write my dreams down because I want a lucid dream. I think it's like an interesting, like, behavioral study on myself. It gives me like interesting insights and it's kind of fun. But I know that it's happening because I'm freaking writing the dreams down. And then we were having this conversation in real life, right? And I remember sitting back and like pausing at the same time that I paused in the dream and having the realization, like, this has happened to me before and it happened in the dream. It's so weird.
It's so weird. I love it.
It's so weird. If anybody can explain this to me, please help. Send help. I don't necessarily want this useless superpower of mine to go away. It's just weird, okay? It's never been anything bad. It's usually always, like, weird stuff. Like,
just, like, random.
Just, like, random stuff or, like, dissonant stuff where it's like, why would these people in my life be in this situation, or why would I be in this location doing this thing? It's always like slightly out of place things, but then those end up happening to like the same detail and everything, and it's so weird.
Interesting. Maybe that's why I have like deja vu all the time. It's because I've dreamed.
Maybe you're dreaming it.
I've dreamed about something, but I just don't remember it.
Yeah, I've wondered about this a lot. If this happens to other people, let me know. Message me, guys, because like I want to know. Is this happening to other people? Where you like dream about something and then like a week later, a year later, whatever, like it happens to you? Please tell me. Like, I want to know. I want to know.
Oh, that's good.
Oh my gosh. Well, we could go on about this. I could go on about this forever. But we probably need to move on. But thank you so much for coming back and being on the podcast again.
Yeah, I love this.
It's always so fun to have you on here. This is all we have time to talk about for now, guys, but we will talk at you later.